Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for being here today. Country of origin labeling is a pretty important deal for all of us. We've seen the ups and downs of what's gone on, and so we're hoping to kind of get this thing reinstated a little bit. I've got about a 15-minute presentation, and then when I get done, we'll move the floor over to a manufacturing guy. But I think we had an interesting year this year. We get into, do I need to move the slide, or can you guys do that? Next slide. July 1, I kind of want to start with this deal because I think it's a really big and important issue for the RCAF membership. But last year I shared during my presentation at noon about the FTC ruling for the product of the USA label. And you know, we kind of had some discussion about it. I know Bill and I talked early. We weren't sure it was going to qualify for beef and cattle. I shared the link up there for you guys so you can kind of get used to, whoop, back me up here. But anyway, I shared the link up there. And I would advise everybody to take a few minutes to get that. We can make it available at the RCAF website. Watch the first 15 minutes of that video talking about the FTC ruling and the hearing that was going on during that time. It's very important that you listen to the words that were being said. Riyat Chopra was one of the representatives who brought this thing forward. And if you listen to his words, he did define it real clear that he finally included beef and cattle in this deal because of the comments that they had received from the producers. So it's a pretty big deal. I think we had a pretty big impact on his decision and the committee's decision. The two other people with him, the chairman and another representative in that committee, they voted for us on a 3-2 vote. So we won that thing, and so Riyat Chopra to me is a pretty big champion for mandatory MCOOL eventually. I think it's a first step. For those of you that didn't understand that bill, the Made in the USA product deal was basically for internet products, medicine, pharmaceutical issues that were sold under the guise of USA product falsely. And so they were trying to clarify and clean that up. So like I say, the first 15 minutes of that hearing is worth your time. Take the time and listen to it. I think we can make it stronger as we go forward, but he was real positive and instrumental in getting that done. The next deal, I want to share this, start with this deal. I serve on the OCM board too with some guys that are all here today. A lot of the OCM boards here. We've got a new board kind of running a new direction with OCM, and I'm really proud of those guys. But we had some meetings in June, the end of June. We met with 20 legislators in Washington, D.C. to talk about the cattle industry, issues that affected the U.S. cattle industry. And I was fortunate to be there. Vaughn Meyer, the president of OCM, and the Checkoff committee chairman here was there. Dave Wright from Neely, Nebraska, RCAF member again. Taylor Haynes, RCAF member again. They're all on the board with me. Craig Veraska from Washington State is on the board with me. But we led the discussion to the legislative body that came in to the George Hotel. We didn't go to the Capitol, people, because of the mandates here with the Chinese virus. But we were there, and we invited those people to come, and we had, as I said, 20 representatives show up, senators and staffers for the legislation, and they came in and listened to our story and what we were telling them about what was going on. So it was really beneficial. It had never been done before. We didn't have to get access to the Capitol. They all came to see us, and it was a free and open discussion. We actually met with the House Ag Committeeman, who's the minority leader right now, G.T. Thompson. He came in that evening and talked to us. And I had one of our Kansas House Ag Committee members, Tracy Mann, this last week. He'd sent his representative aide. We had 2 of our senators from Kansas. We had senators from all over and representatives, but I happened to have 3 from Kansas show up through the invite, which was kind of nice because most of you probably know me, and when I go to a town hall meeting, they always tell me, I really didn't want to see you here today because you're the guy that asks the tough questions. Because I don't let anybody get by with nothing. You know, you're going to be responsible for your actions. So that's kind of what we do. But this chart, back here on this chart, maybe we can get it. Did I get it? to come back up. Disconnected. And we used this to start out with, Dave Wright and I did. And what I want to tell you is everybody talks about the 2014 issue. That was the highest recorded prices in history that we'd ever got for our cattle and calves. And the red line is a cattle market deal. And you're going to probably see this again throughout the meeting. But this is the consumer retail beef price. And you see that thing's going clear off the charts there. But remember this point right here. And this is really important. So this is disconnected. And I'm going to tell you why. This here little report came from our counterparts. So I'm using their data. They said here in 2012, we had, $66 billion worth of cattle and calf sales. Right there, 2012. And then we went up here through 13, 14, we ended up with $76,720,000 cattle and calf sales. So remember that number. That was a big deal, wasn't it? And then what happened in 15? We lost traction because they defeated MCOOL in September. And so then from that point on, we've gone all the way down now again to what, like $65,958 million. So it's almost a $20 billion loss. Okay? So when you see that, remember those numbers. So I'm going to tell you this. They said that due to low cattle numbers, we were the reason we had high cattle prices in 2014. And we say, if that's so, why are the world imports to the U.S. up 30%, and the Brazilian imports are now up over 154%? So even if we did our justice and kept our cattle numbers down, when they flood you with imports that are unmarked or unmarked fairly, you're screwed. You're not going to win that game. And so this here import deal affected our price. We lost $20 billion. And I'll say here in the highlighted part is the revenues that we lost was a producer loss of revenue of $20 billion that the legislators just lost and gave it to the 4 big meat packers. That's out of your rural communities, your rural areas, your ranchers, your farmers. They now have that, they don't have the money. And so who's got the money? The big 4 meat packers. And we agreed, Dave Wright and I, Dave come up with the deal that was the loss of their political power. Because we're losing about 17,000 producers a year. Those people are gone. They don't vote. Now they're not paying the tax roll. So I'd ask this question. I think the number's even larger than $20 billion because somebody want to throw out a number? How many cattle on average we slaughter a year? Somebody? Roughly about 34 million head. So 34 million head. On December 22nd of 2014, I use the example, it's when I sold my calves for $1,835 a head. I've lost $1,000 every year since 2014, and I'm probably the only guy that goes to a town hall meeting and tells the legislators this. If you think I like losing $100,000, you're a dumbass. And they sit there and take it because they know me. I don't like it. It's cost me a lot of money, $600,000 over the last few years. So it's a lot of money. And so you tell them that, but that 34 million head at $1,000 is $34 billion. And I honestly believe we've lost that much. And so we're struggling, people. Here's a little chart I wanted to throw in to talk to you about supplies and demands in the global market. Mexican cattle deal here. It says here that the lowest cattle inventory in Mexico in more than 59 years, recently. March in 16 was 16.6 million head of cattle they had. Their cattle inventory in Mexico was over 30 million head from 77 until 1990, and they've lost that many head of cattle. So that's kind of an interesting figure, isn't it? So you see those numbers. So their cattle deals, it shrunk for 14 years. This here's the Canadian beef cow deal. Again, you go back through the numbers, and we'll look at that chart, and you see where they're at. They've kind of stabilized 2014 and 15 right in there. Their numbers haven't done a whole lot, have they? They've lost declining numbers too. So, the Canadian people, and I've said this before several times, this mandatory MCOOL could have been won had we arbitrated the case. They chose not to arbitrate it, so we lost it because we should have won that. Their markets went up as long as the United States market went up. They basically mirror the United States cattle market if you look at their cash prices, what they receive for cattle. So just showing you those charts, those are the cattle countries that we supposedly were affected by, and when we've lost that. Now, the world inventories. Check those out a little bit. India, pretty big. Brazil, 252 million head of cattle. Now, I just told you imports from Brazil are up 154%. We have 34 million cows in the United States. It's real clear where the supply is going to keep coming from. They can buy it cheaper. I believe the last deal I did that I looked up, imports from Brazil delivered to our border are about 72 cents a pound. So, if you get big enough, you might be able to compete and play with them, but they're going to burn you. So you want to pay attention to that. So we look at the Brazilian cattle herd. China's third, United States is fourth. They claim we have about 93 million head of cattle. I suppose that number's right. You kind of have to use your guesstimate. I mean, I see a lot of declining people. We've lost producers in my area, and we're pretty big in agriculture for farming, but the cattle producers are kind of going by the wayside. So I just kind of want to share you the inventories in the world, but you pay attention to that Brazil number. I'll guarantee you it's going to come back and bite us. They didn't buy access to this market with Brazilian government money for free. They did it to make a huge profit, and they're going to capitalize on it. So why USDA facilitates imports? Their claim was imports of a commodity generally to serve the increase of net social welfare. So cheap food policy. Again, cheap food policy. Buy it the cheapest, sell it in the highest price consuming market, that's what we get. And I said last year, and I'll say it again, you find me one guy and show me a check for 1 cent for a pound of beef or a bushel of grain from a multinational corporation to a USA producer for any exported product to a producer. Find me one. I've done meetings all the time. Anybody in this crowd has ever received that check for at least 1 cent for anything exported, raise your hand, because we need to visit. Isn't happening. They capture every penny, they keep it all. They don't come back to Kyle Hammert in 3 months and say, Kyle, we sold 130 of your calves abroad and here's your check. That does not go on, people. They're a corporation. They keep the money. So I would say that restoring MCOOL, our biggest issue when we were in D.C. meeting with the legislators, first thing that came up was a WTO ruling. And you're going to hear that. You talk to your legislators why they don't reinstate mandatory MCOOL, first thing they're going to tell you, the WTO ruled against you. So Bill, by his good work, Bullard, he put together the things to reduce the leverage that they had in that WTO ruling. And basically it says that we want to reduce the record-keeping burden for imported livestock, provide importers the opportunity to improve the accuracy of labels, to expand the scope of beef muscle cuts covered by the MCOOL requirements. That eliminates the unnecessary exemptions. It broadens the definition of a retailer and empower food service establishments to provide the origin of information for the beef. So the law could be reinstated if we do a few simple things and clean it up. It's kind of like I said during mandatory price reporting. If it sells, report it. If it comes in, let's report it. Everybody ought to know. Only beef and pork are the two commodities that are not labeled. It about infuriates you when that goes on. I had the nice deal the other night. We were sitting at one of the tables here, and the young girls from Nevada and California were there, and they're younger, and was asking them, and they said, people don't know where their beef comes from. They have no idea what that means. So I was amazed that at this time in our history with the industry, people still don't know. And of course, my friend Rick Chambers, he always says, you can't be that damn stupid for free. You kind of have to wonder, it comes at a cost. but we are dependent on our own production here. We've done a terrible job. The checkoff's done a terrible job promoting U.S. beef. Dave Wright, again, could give a lecture on the beef checkoff. The act and order has the right to promote the cattle industry of the United States according to the statutes that he has shared with me. Why it's being done is beyond me. The referendum, according to the deal, by order of the Secretary and the CBB board, could have a referendum tomorrow. We had people try to get that. That all ties into mandatory country of origin labeling. These people that are in Congress need to be pushed to the next level. So hopefully we'll get this done. Remember these points, because you're going to deal with this if you talk to a legislator. I guarantee it's the first thing they bring up. So basically, in closing, we're still at this level in our life, I think. I hope it doesn't get any worse. But I shared that last year. I kind of hope we don't get to a lockdown coming up here. I was getting kind of nervous. So with that, MCOOL, it's our largest marketing tool. It's an opportunity that we have, and I think we need to capitalize on it and keep pushing for it. The most money generated through mandatory country of origin labeling. That there is nothing even close to mandatory COOL if we don't step up and defend our own industry. So we need to do that. And I always say to people recently, you're either with us or against us. So, if you're against me on some of these issues, and I understand people on one issue, they may not like something, but don't sink the ship. Okay? It's worth a fight. You may not agree on everything, but let's set the deal, the focus for the market and the money for the producers. Because if we don't have that money, you can't do anything. Rick Chambers always said, you have enough money, you can fix a lot of your own problems. If you don't have any money, you can't do it. You wait to buy the tires for your pickup. You wait to buy this. You wait to buy that. Well, it'll be better. It'll be better. I got two brothers that aren't in agriculture like me, and they always say, Mike, you've hit one big year in the grain industry and one big year in the cattle industry in about 40. So you pump a lot of money into it to try to survive. But I want to thank everybody for coming. Thank you very much. If you need this later on, you want these slides, you want to talk about it, I'll be over here in the middle of the room. Be glad to visit with you.